Welcome to our deep dive into the life of Martin Luther King Jr. I'm excited to explore these excerpts from his biography with you.
Yeah, definitely. We often think we know the basics of his story, right?
Right.
But this dive is really about understanding the context of the civil rights movement
Yeah.
and the depth of his impact.
Absolutely, and going way beyond just those "I have a dream" sound bites.
You're exactly right. This biography may be concise, but it's packed with insights, and I think you'll be surprised at the nuances it reveals.
Yeah, I'm already intrigued. Like, for example, I was struck by the fact that he won the Nobel Peace Prize at age 35. That's,
Wow.
younger than many people starting their careers, let alone changing the world.
Yeah, there's a testament to the power of his commitment and the impact he had at such a young age.
Absolutely. So let's dive into his journey,
Okay.
starting with his early life. He was born in Atlanta, Georgia in 1929, right in the heart of the Jim Crow South. We're talking about a time and place where segregation was the law dictating every aspect of life for Black people.
It's crucial to grasp what that really meant. Imagine separate schools, water fountains, even cemeteries, like a system designed to enforce inequality and deny basic human dignity.
Yeah.
The biography does a great job of bringing this to life through a personal anecdote about King's childhood.
Oh, you mean the story about his best friend Warren?
Exactly.
Yeah, it hit me hard. They were inseparable until they started school, and then their mothers were forced to separate them simply because of their race.
Exactly. That story highlights how segregation wasn't just some abstract policy. It was a lived reality that ripped apart the fabric of communities and families.
Yeah.
It's no wonder that these experiences had a profound impact on King's understanding of the world and his commitment to fighting for justice.
Absolutely. Given this reality, it's fascinating how King chose the path of nonviolent resistance. His own father, a minister, believed in waiting for gradual change. How did King come to embrace such a radical approach?
The biography points to King's studies as a major influence. He was deeply inspired by Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy of nonviolence. The idea that resisting injustice without resorting to violence could be a powerful force for change. It was a radical departure from the prevailing views at the time, even within the Black community.
So how did this philosophy translate into action? The biography details the Montgomery bus boycott, a pivotal moment in the civil rights movement.
What's often overlooked is the strategic brilliance behind the boycott. It wasn't just a symbolic act, it was a carefully planned campaign targeting the economic lifeline of the city. Black people made up a significant portion of the bus company's ridership, and their refusal to ride had a major impact.
Right. And if people weren't taking the bus, they weren't shopping downtown either. The boycott put immense pressure on local businesses, forcing them to take notice.
The boycott lasted over a year, and it wasn't easy. People faced arrests, intimidation, and violence. King himself was arrested, and his home was bombed. But the Black community persevered, demonstrating the power of collective action and nonviolent resistance.
This must have felt like a huge turning point for the movement. What kind of impact did this victory have?
The Montgomery bus boycott showed the world that ordinary people united in a common cause could challenge unjust laws and bring about real change. It propelled King into the national spotlight and paved the way for future campaigns.
And that's just the beginning. The movement was gaining momentum, and with King at the helm, it was about to make even bigger waves. We left off with the success of the Montgomery bus boycott, a real testament to the power of nonviolent resistance.
Yeah.
It feels like this is a turning point for the movement and for King's leadership. What happened next?
Well, the boycott really put King on the map as a national figure. The Southern Christian Leadership Conference, or SCLC, was formed around this time, with King as its president.
Okay.
It became a major force in coordinating civil rights efforts across the South.
I'm thinking about some of those iconic moments from the early 60s, like the Little Rock, nine Black students who bravely integrated Central High School in Arkansas.
Yeah.
Talk about facing intense opposition.
Absolutely. The biography paints a vivid picture of the resistance they faced. Imagine being a teenager walking into a school surrounded by a mob, screaming threats and insults, all while being protected by the National Guard.
It's hard to fathom the courage it took for those students and their families. The biography mentioned a particularly striking detail.
Oh, yeah.
Elizabeth Eckford, one of the Little Rock Nine, trying to find a friendly face in the crowd.
Right.
And being spat on by a woman who seemed kind at first.
That's the insidious nature of prejudice.
Yeah.
It can hide behind a veneer of respectability.
Yeah.
But amidst this hostility, there were also glimmers of hope.
Yeah.
The biography also mentions how some of Ernest Green's white classmates actually helped him catch up on his schoolwork.
It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, human connection and compassion can shine through. And then there were the sit-ins, another powerful tactic in the fight for equality. I'm especially interested in the Woolworth sit-in, where black students joined by some white allies peacefully occupied segregated lunch counters.
The sit-ins were incredibly effective because they directly challenged the everyday practices of segregation, making it impossible to ignore.
Right.
The Woolworths sit-in particular led to the desegregation of restaurants across the South. It showed that nonviolent direct action could disrupt the status quo and force businesses to confront their discriminatory policies.
These victories, while significant, felt like stepping stones toward something even bigger. There was a sense that the movement was building toward a truly transformative moment.
You're right. And that moment arrived with the March on Washington in 1963.
Okay.
It was a monumental event, drawing over 250,000 people to demand equal rights and an end to segregation.
Wow.
To really understand the impact of the march, we need to consider the atmosphere of the time.
The early 60s were a turbulent time.
Yeah.
The Birmingham campaign, with Bull Connor's brutal tactics against peaceful protesters, had shocked the nation. Images of police dogs attacking children and fire hoses being used on crowds broadcast into living rooms across America. It was a stark and horrifying reality check for many.
The level of violence directed at peaceful protesters was deeply unsettling.
Yeah.
It made King's insistence on nonviolence even more remarkable.
Right.
And it also highlighted the urgency for federal action to protect civil rights.
Speaking of urgency, the biography mentions that King's decision to include children in the Birmingham protests was controversial.
Yeah.
Even within the movement.
It was a risky move, but it proved to be a turning point. Those images of young people being attacked for simply demanding their basic rights galvanized public support and put immense pressure on the Kennedy administration to take action. And
then, of course, there's King's "I Have a Dream" speech at the March on Washington. It's become so iconic that it's almost hard to hear it with fresh ears. But reading it again in this biography, I was struck by the depth of his vision.
It's not just a call for equality. It's a vision for a truly integrated and just America.
Yeah.
The speech masterfully weaves together biblical imagery, historical references, and personal anecdotes to create a message of hope and possibility.
But tragically, the fight was far from over. Just weeks after the march, a bomb ripped through a black church in Birmingham, killing 4 young girls.
Wow.
It was a devastating reminder that even amidst calls for peace and unity, hatred and violence still lurked.
This event, along with the murders of civil rights workers like Medgar Evers and James Chaney, Andrew Goodman and Michael Schwerner, underscored the persistent dangers that activists faced. It also began to fuel a sense of frustration within the black community, leading some to question King's steadfast commitment to nonviolence.
That's where this story starts to get more complex. The biography talks about the rise of the Black Power movement and figures like Malcolm X, who advocated for self-defense and a more confrontational approach. How did King navigate this evolving landscape?
While King never wavered in his belief in nonviolence, he did begin to grapple with the limitations of the movement's focus on legal equality.
Okay.
He started to speak more forcefully about economic inequality, recognizing that true equality couldn't be achieved without addressing the root causes of poverty.
So he was pushing the boundaries of what many considered acceptable at the time.
Yeah.
The biography highlights his efforts to unite poor black and white communities in Chicago, which actually alienated some of his supporters.
He was challenging people to think beyond simple integration and to confront the deeper issues of economic exploitation and systemic oppression. It was a bold move that put him at odds with some within the movement who felt he was moving too far, too fast.
And then there's his stance on the Vietnam War. It must have taken incredible courage to speak out against a war that was so divisive, especially at a time when he was already facing criticism from multiple sides.
His 1967 speech against the war was a turning point.
Yeah.
He argued that the U.S. government was on the wrong side of a moral struggle and that its actions in Vietnam were undermining its credibility on civil rights at home.
Wow.
This stance further alienated some of his allies and led to accusations of being unpatriotic.
It's remarkable how he refused to back down from his convictions, even when it meant facing isolation and condemnation. It speaks to the depth of his moral courage and his unwavering commitment to justice, no matter the cost.
His involvement in the Memphis sanitation workers' strike in 1968 exemplifies this commitment.
Okay.
He saw the strike as a fight for basic human dignity and economic justice, and he was willing to put himself on the line to support the workers.
Tragically, it was during this strike that he was assassinated. His death at the young age of 39 sent shockwaves through the nation and left a void in the movement that would be impossible to fill.
It was a devastating loss.
Yeah.
The biography describes the immediate aftermath, the grief, the anger, and the riots that erupted in cities across America. It felt like a dream had been shattered. But even in death, King's legacy continued to inspire and challenge.
King's assassination was a profound loss, a moment that felt like a turning point in history. But as we've seen throughout this deep dive, his life and work had an impact that extended far beyond his years. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on his legacy, especially how it continues to shape the fight for justice today.
Yeah, it's easy to relegate figures like King to history books. But what's striking is how relevant his message remains, even decades after his death. He challenged us to think about equality, not just as a legal concept, but as a lived reality for all people.
The biography mentions the establishment of Martin Luther King Jr. Day as a national holiday, a testament to his enduring influence, but it's more than just a day off work, right?
Absolutely. It's an opportunity for reflection, for education, and hopefully for action. The King Center, founded by Coretta Scott King, continues to do important work in promoting his philosophy of nonviolence and social change.
And thinking about the issues we face today, from the fight for voting rights to addressing systemic racism and economic inequality, it feels like we're still grappling with many of the same challenges that King dedicated his life to overcoming.
Precisely. His work laid the groundwork for so many movements that are still striving for a more just and equitable world. And his message of nonviolent resistance continues to inspire activists around the globe.
This deep dive has been a powerful reminder of both the progress that's been made and the work that remains unfinished. It makes me wonder, turning to you, our listener, what resonates most with you about King's story? What lessons can we take away from his life and work, and how can we apply them to the challenges we face today?
That's the essential question. King's legacy isn't just about remembering the past. It's about using his example to guide our actions in the present. He urges us to be actively engaged in the fight for justice, to speak out against injustice wherever we see it, and to never give up hope in the possibility of a better world.
The biography ends with a quote from King that perfectly encapsulates this idea. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. It's a reminder that change is possible, but it requires effort, courage, and a collective commitment to creating a more just and compassionate society.
We can't simply wait for progress to happen. We have to be the ones bending that arc. Each of us in our own way can contribute to making King's dream a reality.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we encourage you to explore further. Learn more about the civil rights movement, engage in critical conversations about race and justice, and find ways to make a difference in your community. Because as King so powerfully reminded us, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Thank you for joining us on this journey.
And until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep striving to build a world that reflects King's vision of equality and opportunity for all.